Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and we got to do the stock up and stock down for that preseason game against the Chiefs yesterday, August 20th on Saturday, starting at 4 p.m. all the way through 7 p.m. Of course, it's a preseason game, so our starters didn't play the entire game. It's hard to really break down and deeply analyze certain things when there's such small sample sizes, so this will become easier when we get to the regular season. But even throughout all of that, this gives us a good chance to also look at a lot of the depth guys that we had and a lot of the backups. And of course, since this is a stock up, stock down, we're trying to focus on the players or specific things that had the biggest increase or decrease in stock. So Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson having a good day isn't necessarily a stock up, stock down, because we expect that. Now, if they were to have an exceptional day or if they were to have an off day, that would be significant enough to include them. But this is a difference from going into this game and leaving out of this game. Who increased in stock and who decreased in stock significantly enough to where it's worthy of discussing. And we're doing 5 stock ups and 5 stock downs. Most of them are specific players, but a couple of them are also like a specific position group. And now that you know how all of this is going down, before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure y'all pull up every Friday for the broadcast podcast where we talk about everything funny going on, sports, music, anime, gaming, whatever. And then make sure you pull up every Sunday, including this Sunday at 6 p.m. for the call-in live stream where y'all call in, you voice your opinions. If you have anything negative or positive to say about the Commanders, call in and let your voice be heard. If you have any questions, call up and ask your questions, but the show is mostly for y'all. Of course, I'll rebuttal and I'll answer any questions that are asked, but for the most part, this is for y'all, and it's going to be a 3-minute timer per usual, so make sure you come with all your ideas organized and ready to go, and let's get it. Alright, so starting with the stock ups, we'll start with the good news first. We gotta go with Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat looked really good live. Like, I thought he was having a good day, but then when I noticed that he had 3 hurries and a sack on only 16 pass rush snaps, that's really impressive. That's a good day. That sounds like he's on pace to get a double-digit sack season, his first double-digit sack season. Montez Sweat sounds like he's probably in his best form yet. And, I mean, just imagine when Chase Young comes back and that takes a little bit of pressure off of him. But I think Fedarian Mathis is also going to help with that as well. Even without Chase Young here, Fedarian Mathis, especially when we go to 5 defensive linemen, he'll be that middle guy eating up double teams, and then there'll be 3 other guys getting 1v1s, and then somebody's going to be left free, and it's either going to be James Smith-Williams or Montez Sweat, especially until Chase Young gets back, depending on who the opposing offensive line prioritizes that specific play. But again, 16 pass rushing snaps, 3 hurries and a sack, that sounds like a breakout season waiting to happen. But then again, I don't know how much stock to put into it, because Chase Young looked really good in the preseason last year, and then he had a very lackluster year even before he got hurt. So I don't know, but Montez Sweat stock definitely went up after that game. That was very impressive. The second stock up, I gotta include Shaka Toney. I mean, he just has a skill set that nobody else on this team has. Granted, I love Chase Young and Montez Sweat's athletic ability, but Shaka Toney has the best burst, speed, and bend around the edge. He's like the ultimate situational pass rusher. He's the only guy on this team that has like a Von Miller-like play style and shows Von Miller flashes. But at the end of the day, of course, he's not Von Miller at all. But I'm a big Shaka Toney fan. First of all, I feel like we should move him to Sam linebacker occasionally because I think he can cover better than he gets credit for. And then if he were to play more linebacker and be out there for coverage, he would just be on the field more often anyway. And then, of course, his best skill set is his pass rush ability. He's our best pure, speedy, quick pass rusher on the team, period. Again, I love Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Love what they do. Love their athleticism and burst. They're also very bursty and explosive as well. But Shaka Toney just has that quickness that nobody else has, and it showed. On just 9 pass rushing snaps, he had 2 sacks. Granted, it's against backups, but that's still ridiculous, and we just don't have another guy, again, with that type of burst and bend. Remember, Micah Parsons coming out of the draft felt like Shaka Toney got taken way too late in the 7th round. Like, we got a huge steal. And he didn't even talk up other defensive players or even Jahan Dotson, who we just took this past draft in the 1st round, as much as he talked about Shaka Toney. He feels like Shaka Toney should truly have a much larger impact on an NFL team than he currently has, and he felt like he was drafted dangerously low in the 7th round. I feel like Shaka Toney has loads of potential that we're just not tapping into enough, honestly. Again, he showed in the Senior Bowl that he can cover. I think, honestly, he could just basically be a more athletic Anthony Barr that can also rush the passer, but we haven't utilized that yet. But at the end of the day, he's showing that in 9 pass rushing snaps, 2 sacks. That's ridiculous statistics right there. And of course, like, it's fantasy land, but if you project that throughout the course of a game, and if he can somehow do that against starters, that's literally like a 40-sack season waiting to happen. Like, that's how impressive that was what he did in 9 snaps. Again, it was against backups, but his stock still most certainly goes up. And remember, he looked pretty good against the Panthers last week in preseason as well. He just had that one play where he ended it in a really dumb way, ripping off Matt Corral's helmet. But even like the first 80% of that rep was amazing. Burst off the edge, bend straight to Matt Corral. You know how last year a lot of our defensive linemen had a problem of going too far back. He doesn't have that problem. He knows how to somehow bend and curve and hit an angle to where he's right there where the quarterback is, instead of running around him and giving him space to step up and go through him, and basically creating a chasm between the defensive tackle and the edge rusher who's rushing around. The first 80% of that rep against the Panthers was absolutely amazing, but then the last 20% ripping the guy helmet off and even going up that high to even try to tackle him was terrible. But Shaka Toney shows a lot of potential. He has a lot of flashes. Then next up, the starting corners actually did really well. And granted, as bad as our starting defense was, it wasn't necessarily the corners' fault. At least we're talking about Kendall Fuller and William Jackson specifically. Now, Benjamin St-Juste, you know, he struggled a little bit, but he got it together as the game went on and started to get warmed up. But the specific stock up is Kendall Fuller and William Jackson, our 2 starting outside corners. Now, granted, Kendall Fuller did get beat bad on that touchdown to the sideline. I mean, just completely bullied, but Pat Mahomes threw it in a great spot, and then the receiver did a good job of boxing him out. But outside of that, Kendall Fuller was really good. He was targeted 6 times, and then of course you had that 1 touchdown, but he only allowed 2 catches for 9 yards, and he forced 3 incompletions. Like, literally outside of that touchdown, he was really good yesterday. So it wasn't on him, again, outside of that touchdown. And then William Jackson, I mean, the fact that we don't remember him even really playing like that is because that first play that they targeted him deep down the field, first of all, I thought it was amazing coverage. I thought it was just simple hand fighting between the receiver and corner. That was not a pass interference in my opinion. And then after that amazing pass breakup on what they considered a pass interference, I don't think he was targeted again. Even Pat Mahomes was like, nah, we just gonna have to throw it to somebody else. We're gonna target these tight ends against these linebackers. We're gonna go anywhere but William Jackson. So he started to do what he did the second half of last year, basically shutting down a third of the field, taking away the #1 receiver out of the play. So Kendall Fuller and William Jackson were actually really good yesterday. Again, outside of Kendall Fuller's touchdown that was, I mean, really difficult for anybody to cover, and then outside of that 1 pass interference from William Jackson that really wasn't a pass interference, those 2 were exceptional. So stock up on our 2 outside corners. And then also O-line depth. Remember, Chase Roulier, our starting center, was only in there for a little bit at a time. And then Samuel Cosmi, our starting right tackle, those were the only 2 starters out there the entire day. While our starters were out there, we had backup left tackle, backup left guard, and Sadiq Charles. And he actually looked pretty good. Sadiq Charles was really good against the run, especially. And we already know Cornelius Lucas can hold it down at left tackle or right tackle if need be. And then your starting right guard was like a 4th or 5th string guard in Aaron Montero, and he did his thing as well. It wasn't great, but he held it down. They were opening up run lanes for Brian Robinson. They kept Carson Wentz protected for the vast majority of the time. Now, granted, Carson Wentz had that 1 sack. The offensive line, literally outside of that play, was really good. And again, we only had 1.5 starters because Chase Roulier was on pitch count, so he didn't even start that long. And then your only other starter was right tackle Samuel Cosmi. Everybody else was 2nd, 3rd stringers. Actually, for real, 3rd stringers. Cornelius Lucas is our direct backup tackle, but Sadiq Charles is behind Wes Schweitzer on the depth chart. He wasn't available. Remember, Trey Turner and Andrew Norwell, our starting guards left and right, were not available. And then again, Charles Leno is our starting left tackle. He wasn't available. And then you also got to think about the fact that if all of those backups, 3rd and 4th stringers, are on the starting O-line, when we go to the 2nd string O-line, you got to go even deeper in the guard pool to get some guys to play. And then when you go to the 3rd stringers, by the time Sam Howell was out there, we had guys that are clearly not going to make an NFL roster out there trying to block for Sam Howell. And it still wasn't absolutely absolutely terrible. Overall, it was kind of bad because technically they gave up 7 pressures with 2 sacks, 2 hurries, and 3 quarterback hits on 46 pass blocking snaps yesterday, as in Saturday against the Chiefs. But again, like, what can you do? And at the end of the day, what I saw when the starters were out there was really good, and the fact that we had second and third string offensive linemen out there for the majority of the time, for the majority of the O-line as well, again, only 1.5 starters, that's very encouraging. Our offensive line depth is definitely better than what people think. And then the last stock up, the running back group, man. Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, and even the depth guys looked really good. Now, I'm going to focus on Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, but Jonathan Williams and Jared Patterson did their things. Jared Patterson got hated on with that 1 touchdown that should have been his with the forward progress, but then he ended up getting it right back after that. Got it right back in blood. Refs tripping, he said, I'm still going to get it. And then Jonathan Williams has just been running really well, in my opinion. But Brian Robinson, first of all, running back 1 yesterday. If you haven't heard, he was literally running with the first team. Antonio Gibson was running with the second team. But he looked really good. First of all, Pro Football Focus gave him the highest rush grade of the entire day from any running back that played in the preseason game with a 77.4. But he also had 3 rushing first downs and 27 yards after contact on only 8 rushing attempts. That's really, really good. Now, Jonathan Williams, just to include his stats before we go to Antonio Gibson, he finished with a 66.5 rushing grade, and he had the second most rushing attempts with 4 out of our entire running back backfield. And so if Jonathan Williams had the second most rushing attempts with 4, and I'm this high on Antonio Gibson, where did it come from? Well, it was really the receiving, man. I mean, Brian Robinson had 8 carries for 31 yards, which is pretty nice. His longest run was 9 yards. But Antonio Gibson in the passing game, 3 receptions for 37 yards, averaging 12.3 yards per reception, with his longest being a 22. And he was targeted 4 times, caught 3 of them. Now, one of them was Carson Wentz's fault. Now, even though Antonio Gibson did most of his work with the backups with Taylor Heineke in the game, I remember vividly one time Carson Wentz overthrew him when he was open too. He ran a really good route, shook the DB. I don't remember if it was a linebacker, corner, safety. Either way, shook him, got completely open, got enough separation, and then Carson Wentz overthrew it to the sideline. Outside of that, when Taylor Heineke was hitting Antonio Gibson, he was catching everything. Some of those catches weren't even like super easy. They were kind of out of range. He would snag it, and then he would make guys miss in the open field. And this just further proves as to why I feel like Brian Robinson should be Mark Ingram and Antonio Gibson should be Alvin Kamara. Again, it's a crazy connection there because Alvin Kamara and Antonio Gibson are both from the metro Atlanta area, and then both Brian Robinson and Mark Ingram went to Alabama. The parallels are just ridiculous, but I just really hope Scott Turner utilizes both of those guys just like that, because Brian Robinson showed he can handle his part of that deal, and Antonio Gibson has shown flashes of some Alvin Kamara-like play. Again, as long as he's not fumbling, that man's electric. Remember, don't forget, he was one of 7 running backs last year that had 1,000 yards. I know 1,000 yards isn't as crazy as it used to be with an extra game, but still, if you're one of only 7 guys out of the entire NFL to do anything, I think that's very significant. And again, you can't forget what he did against the Bills on that 80-yard screen pass. Probably nobody else on our roster can do that. I mean, maybe a couple of our receivers, but I love J.D. McKissick, but he always eventually trips over himself at some point. And so Antonio Gibson, honestly, outside of maybe a couple of receivers like Terry Jahan and Curtis, it was the only one that could take that screen pass 80 yards like he did. And I'm not even sure about the receivers because vision and all of that. I mean, the way he set all of that up was beautiful. I think we definitely need to utilize Antonio Gibson far more in the passing game. And he showed why. Again, he was able to get open against DBs and linebackers. He was able to make difficult catches, and he was making guys miss in the open field. But of course, Brian Robinson being RB1 is technically the biggest storyline because that's still kind of crazy, and he handled it very well. Our offense looked really smooth with him out there, always making the first guy miss or at least falling forward for an extra yard from where he was first touched. And then stock downs, you got to start with the third down defense. I mean, there's just nothing else to start with. There's nothing else to talk about. Absolutely nothing else to talk about, because even though the Chiefs finished 9 of 15 on third downs in the game, which is still really bad, the starters were 5 of 5. The Washington Commanders so far, when the starters are going against the starters, have not forced a punt. It's either been a field goal or a touchdown. I mean, we got lucky last week when Baker Mayfield like fumbled a snap. They might have scored right there, but then they ended up kicking a field goal. Our defense hasn't really stopped anybody on third down yet in the whole preseason, again, out of the starters. It's been more so the opponent having offensive errors and things like that. It's bad. Again, the Chiefs were 5 of 5 while Pat Mahomes was in the game. They were just doing whatever they wanted to, and of course, we still had DBs 3rd and 5. They're 8 yards down the field for no reason. Just, I mean, completely behind the first down sticks. I just don't understand it. And then it's just crazy because historically, we have always been terrible at third. We have been terrible at third downs for a while, because even last year, we were 31st in opponent third down conversion percentage with 48.47. Only team worse than us were the Chargers with 49.54%. But if you think about it, going all the way back to 2010, like John Kahn pointed out, we ranked 30th on third down since 2010, and since 2018, we're dead last. Now, of course, all of that isn't Jack Del Rio's fault. That's a lot of Jim Haslett and Joe Barry and some Greg Winusky, but Jack Del Rio hasn't been any better. Again, since 2018, we're dead last. Last season, Jack Del Rio is clearly our defensive coordinator. We were 31st. We got to do way better, man. And I know Rivera is super frustrated because he keeps talking about it, and it's just making him look crazy when he says we're fixing the issues, and then when we go out there, we don't. It's making him look untrustworthy. He's been very trustworthy with a lot of things. I mean, even this Curtis Samuel situation seems like it's finally turned around. But with this third down defense, he keeps telling us that they've identified the problem and they're working on it, and then there's literally zero progress. Now, granted, it's Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs, one of the best teams in the NFL, arguably the best offense in the NFL, but still 5 of 5 on third downs, never forcing a punt is still insane. If you want to be a really good team, if you want to go to the playoffs like you say you do, if you want to win this division, you got to be able to beat other good teams. You can't just beat up on the bad teams and that's it. That's just not going to get you anywhere. So we got to be better, most notably on third down. And then the second stock down, Bobby McCain in the slot. I think he did pretty well as far as free safety goes, but one time he was in the slot going against a backup tight end in the Chiefs because it was not Travis Kelce. I don't even remember the guy's name. He got cooked, literally one-on-one man coverage in the slot. So I know I keep hearing that Bobby McCain's a better slot corner than he is free safety, but on that play, he definitely didn't look like it. I mean, that was straight cook. And overall, our corners, again, our 2 outside corners were pretty good yesterday. The reason we were getting killed was mostly because of the safeties, which takes me to the next part, and I'm sad to say it, but the third stock down is Cameron Curl. Yesterday was terrible for him. That was like really bad. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I'm going to have to go look at the all-22 to truly see if it's his fault or not. I'm in disbelief that Cameron Curl just looked that bad at times out there. I mean, getting cooked in coverage, late to run stops, everything. I don't know if it was somebody else's fault and Cameron Curl was just trying to make up for it, and then he would be the closest guy to the play, so it would look like his fault. But from what I saw live, it looked like it was all Cameron Curl's fault. But again, I'm gonna have to go look at the all-22 because I just want to give him the benefit of the doubt so bad, because he's always been so great and most importantly so consistent for us. And for him to look that bad, man, it scares me. I mean, I don't think he'll ever be that bad again, because first of all, his main thing is that he never makes the same mistake twice. And then also, with him finally having a bad game, we have a lot of tape to look at and truly focus on what he can fix, and so he can become an even more complete and an even more consistent player than he already was. So I mean, ultimately, if you want to look at the bright side of it, now he knows exactly what to focus on for the rest of this offseason before the regular season gets started, as far as his skill set and positives and negatives go. But that was a really bad game from Cameron Curl, and I was so sad to see it, and I'm so sad to say it right now. And then Cole Holcomb, now granted, he was going against Travis Kelce a couple of times, but he allowed catches on all 4 of his targets in coverage for 40 yards and 2 first downs. Cole Holcomb was pretty bad out there as well. And just like Cameron Curl, man, with the improvement in coverage from Cole Holcomb, and he's been such a steady, consistent guy for us against the run and again in coverage. I mean, when his rookie season and really the season after that as well, it was a little iffy. But since then, he's been way better in coverage. And last year, he showed how much he improved in coverage with a couple of interceptions and just overall just better. I mean, quarterbacks not even targeting him at times because his coverage was so good. But today, granted, again, it was Travis Kelce at times, but it wasn't always Travis Kelce. And so, Cole Holcomb, you got to do better if we expect our defense to be any type of good to elite like a lot of us hoped it would be this year, with all of the new talent and all of that type of stuff, and us basically having all of our starters returning, going from last year to this year. Other than Chase Young, these are literally all of the same starters, and technically ever since that Buccaneers game when Chase Young got hurt if you include James Smith-Williams as a starter last year, during that 4-game win streak, we're technically returning all 11 starters from last year, specifically that 4-game win streak, to this year. So there's literally no excuse. It's too much continuity. The communication should be A1 at this point. We're not even plugging in one starter of one different starter. It's the same exact 11, including James Smith-Williams. So there's literally no excuses right now. And Cole Holcomb, we just need you to be better. I mean, granted, that was more so a lecture to the entire defense, but Cole Holcomb, since we're talking about you right now, allowing all 4 targets to be caught for 40 yards and 2 first downs is not good. Not good. Again, it's Travis Kelce, but you're gonna have to cut. There's Travis Kelce's out there. There's George Kittles. There's Darren Waller's. There's, hopefully our team has a couple of those guys in the making. The Eagles and the Cowboys have good tight ends. We got to go against Evan Ingram against the Jaguars week 1, and I know he's ready. The Lions have a really good tight end. We're going against a lot of good tight ends this year, so Cole Holcomb and really everybody, y'all need to step it up. And then the last stock down, I have Sam Howell as QB1. Now, I felt like it was obvious that he was not QB1. It's clearly Carson Wentz's team. Taylor Heinicke's clearly the backup, and he showed why yesterday. Even though Sam Howell looked really good in the beginning, like really good, and he ended up finishing with a 9.4 average target depth compared to Carson Wentz only having a 6.6, and he threw for 5 first downs. He looked really good in the beginning. He just ended the game very poorly, but it's kind of crazy because it's basically what he did last game, minus the really good scrambling and running. He basically did the same things. Remember last week against the Panthers, he had 2 plays that should have been turnovers, and then today he had 1 play that actually was a turnover. It wasn't that big of a difference in play, honestly. Honestly, if anything, I think Pro Football Focus graded him higher this game than they did the Panthers game. I also think it's because he ended the game poorly rather than starting the game poorly. I feel like if he did exactly what he did yesterday, but if you just reversed it, he started with the interception and then ended the game with that really good long touchdown drive that was finished by a Jared Patterson touchdown. If it would have been reversed like that, I'm pretty sure people would be way higher on Sam Howell. But because he ended the game with the interception, really 2 bad throws. The throw before the interception was bad, then the interception was bad, even though I got to look at the all 22 to see if it was the receiver's fault or not. And then just overall, Sam Howell just ended the game poorly. It just didn't look good. He was missing a lot of guys, inaccurate, not seeing the field as well as you would hope, being inaccurate, all of that type of stuff. But he looked really good in the beginning on those first couple of drives. But my point is, he's still QB3 for a reason, still making rookie mistakes. Now, granted, of course he's more talented than Taylor Heinicke. He can do things that Taylor Heinicke could never do, especially arm strength-wise. But he's still making a lot of rookie mistakes, and that's why Taylor Heinicke is your direct backup quarterback. And the way the offense flowed with Taylor Heinicke yesterday, hitting Cam Sims, hitting Antonio Gibson, and then just leading probably our best drive of the day as far as just how easy it looked for us to score. That's why Taylor Heinicke's still your QB2. Sam Howell, again, I'm rooting for him. I want him to be our backup quarterback because going from Carson Wentz to Taylor Heinicke, you literally got to throw out like 30% of the playbook. You don't have to really do that with Sam Howell. Maybe you got to tweak a few things here and there, but overall, you can still utilize pretty much the majority of the playbook, probably like 90-something%. So ideally, Sam Howell is our QB2 at the very least. And of course, there are a lot of y'all that feel like he should be our QB1. But until he fixes a lot of the rookie mistakes that he's still making, that Taylor Heinicke doesn't make, that Carson Wentz doesn't make, he's going to be QB3. So let's not overreact to the interception that he threw and how poorly he ended the game, but let's not also overreact to how good he looked at times in this last game and the Panthers game. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you felt about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Of course, let me know how you feel about the stock up, stock downs. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Would you add any more stock ups? Would you add any more stock downs? And also, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. But I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.